Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm going to share my screen over. I've got a presentation for you guys, and we're going to talk about what's going on. If I could. Okay, I think you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for taking the time and expressing the interest in perhaps representing the industry of residential housing construction at either the state or the national level. As you know, the Home Builders Association of Greater New Orleans is going to celebrate its 85th anniversary in 2026, which is an exciting milestone for us here in New Orleans. But it also is representative of the fact that we are an entire federation and all of our members get a 3-in-1 membership, which includes local, the state, and the national associations, something we refer to as the three-legged stool or the Federation of Home Builders. So one of the things that we are able to offer members is an opportunity to grow in leadership, to demonstrate their commitment to our industry, to help shape policy and standards that impact our industry and our businesses every day, and to contribute their voice towards our collaboration and lobbying and advocacy at all different levels. And all different levels really do come into play. We do a lot of local advocacy in New Orleans right now. We're dealing with changes to the codes in Jefferson Parish that could expand access to ADUs and perhaps allow some conditional zoning variances that we haven't had access to before. We're also seeing some change and some movement in New Orleans and other parishes that we represent, and all of that happens through local advocacy. However, today we're going to be talking about other areas that we can get involved, including the state and the national levels. And so with that, I'm going to start off to make sure that everybody is oriented well with just a brief introduction on LHBA and a quick video. All here with me
is the only association dedicated solely to supporting the Louisiana residential building industry. LHBA represents over 4,000 members across Louisiana through its affiliated 10 local associations that are spread throughout the state.
I joined Baton Rouge Home Builders Association to learn more about the home building industry and provide me with the educational information to help not only expand my business, but meet other people who have been there and done what I'm trying to do with my own personal business.
It costs less than 20 cents a day to be a part of the Louisiana Home Builders Association.
LHBA has a political action committee represented by trustees from each of our 10 local associations working to elect pro-housing and pro-business candidates to the Louisiana legislature.
You will see a day when people will look at Louisiana and say, how are y'all doing? And you will be proud to say that I live in this state.
I've been a member for 17 years. I joined as someone pushed me to get involved. They mentored me, and I found it was a great avenue to increase my business, develop relationships, and the most important thing with your local membership is that you'll also get to be part of a state association and a national association.
LHBA members are represented in Washington, D.C. by affiliation with the National Association of Home Builders and its 135,000 members across America.
One of the biggest benefits that I've had of being a member of my local association is the ability to network with not only other associates, but with the builders. And that has provided a tremendous amount of success and opportunity for myself and my business to be able to get new clients. But also, I've gained a ton of knowledge by being active in different committees, from membership to legislation and advocacy to serving at the state level.
LHBA has members at the Louisiana State Uniform Construction Code Council working each day to make sure that we amend the codes in Louisiana that will affect our building industry members. For example, amending out the unnecessary and onerous sprinkler systems in every residential construction project that our members build.
Another benefit of joining the Home Builders Association is there's a bunch of discount and rebate programs that you can take advantage of My husband uses it for going to Lowe's, and we use it for UPS, GMC, Ford, Mercedes. There's lots of different benefits.
I have developed relationships with people across the country. No matter where I go across the United States, I can pick up the phone and call somebody in any state that I travel to and get assistance, guidance, or help. If you're not a member, you're missing out on one of the greatest opportunities that you have as a business owner.
All right. So now that we have a little sense of what LHBA is, and many of you already have a little bit of knowledge about it, I want to talk a little bit about what it means to serve at LHBA. And in order to do that, I just wanted to point out a few things about the association. We have had some challenges in the past, but over the last 5 years, we've seen a real what do we want to call it? Kind of a rebirth of activity at the state association and a true re-engagement of members across the state. So we've seen a lot of change. But the state association really focuses on these 5 things: advocacy support, lobbying support, educational resources, networking opportunities, and of course the savings that was mentioned a few moments ago. The governance of LHBA is set up through a board of directors. Those board of directors, the members, are appointed by the presidents of the local associations, of which we have 10 across the state. The board of directors set policy and establish priorities for our association at the state level. And the senior officers and other members of the executive committee implement those policies on a daily operational basis. So the leadership roles are as directors for the board, senior officers, if you're interested in leadership, and the opportunity to serve on committees. So voting members, delegates, and regional leadership include state-based voting members. Those are the director seats that we're able to appoint. So based on the membership size of Greater New Orleans, we are one of the largest in the state. We have 8 director seats and 2 associate. Those are director seats for builder members and 2 associate director seats. And then we're able to name alternates that can serve should one of those directors not be able to attend one of the 3 meetings held per year. For those members that serve on senior officer ladders, if they serve as the president, they become a life director, which means that they have voting rights in perpetuity at the state level. The organization is comprised of 10 regions represented by local HBAs for each of those 10 areas across the state. In advance of any of the LHBA meetings, I host a caucus call that allows all of our delegates representing HBA G&O to get together to talk about agenda items and determine how we feel about those things, do the debate, the pros and cons, so that we can go up to Baton Rouge and be able to discuss these things legitimately, clearly, and effectively to perpetuate the aims and goals of our local membership down here in Louisiana. It's important to recognize that the priorities that we have in Southeast Louisiana may not be the same priorities that members in Shreveport or even Monroe may hold. But in particular, as Bruce is on the call, would recognize we are in the wind zone of South Louisiana, along with Southwest, Southeast, and even Lafayette and Teche and North Shore. So we have a lot of issues going on with wind mitigation and insurance pricing and bringing carriers back to our market, and that has occupied a lot of our time. It's not quite the same thing up in the northern part of the state. They have some other priorities up there. And so it's always important that we are able to represent the interests of our members when we go to these meetings. Each of the meetings has some key leadership events. For example, we have our installation in January. In spring, it always focuses around the legislative session, and we host a crawfish boil where we lobby Louisiana style, I like to say. We cook some crawfish, we have some drinks, and the legislatures come right out of the Capitol down to our tent at the State Museum, and we're able to talk and engage with them on issues critical to residential housing. And then in the fall, we usually reflect on the strategic plan and elect new leadership. So it's a value in each of the meetings that go on. We hear insightful presentations, not only from members, but often from leadership and special guests. As you saw in the video, we had Governor Landry was at our last meeting, and he made a very insightful speech to us at our general meeting, at our general session. The LHBA pillars are part of the strategic plan developed last year and implemented this year. We've seen some pretty significant success with those pillars, and those pillars are here identified in 5 different areas. And so the first pillar is lead, and this is focused on figuring out how do we have the good governance necessary to make this association as effective and capable as it can possibly be. We have an educate pillar, which is focused on how we can standardize and provide effective education statewide in certain areas. So, for example, code training or ensuring that safety training is consistently addressed across the state in a consistent manner. We have another pillar that deals with advocacy. This is clearly one of the most important areas that we deal with at the state. And so the advocacy pillar deals with our PAC and our legislative committees and working with our lobbyists directly. Then we have a development pillar, and the development pillar is all about figuring out ways to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our members and providing a positive value proposition to them as we do so. And then our final pillar is impact, and impact is all about perpetuating all the great things that LHBA does for the members across the state. And so each of these pillars are a focus area tied to the strategic plan, and they encompass various committees that are involved in the development and objectives that each of the pillars create. They're all opportunities for you to be involved at the state level. So the LHBA service year in 2026 involves 3 meetings. The first meeting is going to be January 14 to 15. As I mentioned, it's the installation meeting. We also have some awards. So LHBA gives out awards each year for Builder of the Year across the state, Associate of the Year. They do a number of other awards as well. And then in April, we will have, this year it'll be the 20th to the 21st. This is consistent with the normal legislative session that happens in Baton Rouge. And so we'll have an opportunity to review all of the legislation that's being proposed and debated within the session, and have an opportunity at the crawfish boil to meet and engage with many of our elected representatives. And then the final meeting of the service cycle for 2026 will be in September 16 and 17. And again, all of these meetings are in Baton Rouge. So let me pause there for a moment and see if we have any questions that I can do about the state association. Sounds like crickets. Gerald, why don't you give us a little bit of insight, having served for the last few years at the state level? Tell us a little bit about your experience.
So one of the best things is, meeting different people throughout the state and talking about not just your local region, but what's happening in the Northeast, the West, and getting to know them. You find out that we may be 300 miles away, but we still have the same issues, the same problems. One of the things I can tell you from when I first started to now, the state is much more receptive to New Orleans. You're seeing a big change, and it makes you feel like you're there now for a reason, where prior you felt like you weren't even being heard. So it's been a great experience.
Yeah, and I think that's reflective of a time at LHBA where they were maybe not as responsive as we had hoped that they would be to members across the state. And over the last few years, a group of members got together and they kind of did a cultural tour across the state and talked to members directly and talked to each of the locals and brought that information back. And that was really the seed that led to the strategic plan and the changes at state. And we really have quite a vibrant state association going on now. So a lot of work that was needed to revitalize the state association has been done, but there's so much work to go forward. And that's an important part about service. It's not just something as a credential to put on a resume or to say, okay, this is something that I'm doing. We really need people that want to engage, that want to make a difference, and that want to help us be a stronger industry, to provide for programs that lead to higher quality housing, that lead to more people achieving the American dream of home ownership, and ensuring that we can overcome the obstacles in front of us, like the insurance crisis, And these things we have to focus on. They're specifically here in Louisiana. They're not issues that we're focused on in other areas of the country. You know, California is focused on fires. We've got other parts of the country that are dealing with many different issues, including impact fees and federal regulations and oversight. I just saw in New York, they passed something about the gas situation up there, which is outlawing the use of natural gas in new neighborhoods, which is, this is a huge deal when you want to talk about choice for homeowners and savings and the efficiency of the distribution and other matters. So as members, we have the ability to look at those things at the national level. But we have plenty of challenges of our own right here in Louisiana. And just looking at the footage from the recent storm that hit Jamaica really brings it home that we have urgency and need to get things done right here in Louisiana. So that's a little bit about our state association. Anybody want to add something? I see Valerie has her hand up.
Yeah, I'm just curious to participate in some capacity. How much time is needed for committee meetings and, to pre-plan for these particular things on the state level? How much investment of time is required?
It's a great question. So the first thing to know is that the state holds 3 meetings for the year. Those meetings are in Baton Rouge, and they're 2-day meetings. So they meet in the afternoon of one day, and then they meet in the morning of the next day, and they usually have the board meeting at noon over lunch. And so there's 3 of those throughout the year on the dates that we indicated earlier. Now, your engagement through committees and other matters is going to vary on how much activity is involved, but typically they're done virtually. So they have virtual meetings and they meet and they talk about different aspects that are going on. So for the impact pillar, for example, they're dealing with website revisions, and they're working on coming up with a statewide magazine that can be a vector to get additional information not only about members but about our industry out to consumers and builders and subcontractors across the state. So they're working on some interesting initiatives, but most of that work is all going to be virtual. So it'll be through virtual meetings like this. But it will be some amount of time on there. Others, like the legislative committee, they could have substantial more time because, there might be 120 bills that come out for the next legislative session. And all those bills have to be reviewed. They have to be looked at. We've got to put eyes on it. We use AI technology to review them and get summaries, and we use keywords to identify what's going on. We use a subscription to Curate to identify new things that come up on local and municipal city councils and boards. So we use a lot of technology, but it does take some time to review those things, and more importantly, to analyze it and determine how it's going to impact us, and perhaps identify things that will be impacted that the authors of those bills have not thought of, right? So there can be some time impacted that can be greater or less depending on what committees you hold interest in and participate on. The good news with the legislative committee is there's more people, right? So there's more people to spread that work across. We have a professional full-time lobbyist that helps with that as well. But there are many different committees and a lot of different responsibilities. I would think Mackenzie's been involved for a little while. What would you say you spent time on for different committees?
I would say my experience more with state HBA has been through Chris's leadership. He's had vice chair seats, secretary seats, and I'm kind of his assistant. So whenever he gets involved, I get involved. They'll usually have 1 or 2 maybe Zoom meetings in between those 3 main state meetings. Those meetings are more action based. Hey, what can we do? What are we doing during this time? What do we want to do? And then the state meetings are more of the reporting to the board type of concept. So, hey, since we met last, this committee's been working on XYZ. Here's what we came up with. Do you approve? Let's move forward. I would say those meetings, there's more, like Dan said, there's more when there's more work to do. I think there's more advocacy efforts being done than maybe per se membership or PR or whatever those other committees may be. But I would say usually it's a Zoom meeting, maybe once or twice in between those 3 main meetings. And then what you do outside of those meetings for your volunteer time, your efforts, whatever that may be, is whatever you decide to do and put into it. So,
Thank you. Got it.
yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Okay.
Another committee that's out there that's quite popular is the Building Codes and Sciences. So they look at a lot of the impacts of what's going on through the LSU CCC and the code adoption. They were the group that looked at the IRC 2021 and then moved forward with recommending that LSU CCC adopt ring shank nails in Louisiana to append on the 2021 code, which gives us now the highest quality resilient codes adopted in the United States, tied with Florida. So that's impactful because that communicates to insurance companies that we are proactively engaged and serious about building resilient structures in Louisiana.